Hello everyone, I'm Nini FC and this is Blue Lions TV. Welcome to a transfer review video. We're going to be talking about some of the players we've signed, giving our thoughts and opinions on them as well. And we're just going to give some general insight in the transfer window. You know, some players that came through, players that have left, deals that fell through on top of that as well. Today, I'm joined by Joe Tweedy. Hey Joe, if you want to introduce yourself to the stream.
Yeah, hey guys, Joe Tweedy here. Quite interested to have a chat about some of the players we signed, particularly I think the last week of the window was quite interesting for us, considering the previous couple of months seemed fairly quiet. So happy to jump on today.
Yeah, and I must thinking that probably the first thing worth mentioning is, I mean, it's a pretty stupid question too, but how do you rate this window compared to last year's window?
Yeah, it's like night and day, isn't it? It's almost as if, you know, a manager who is willing to work with the board, who's willing to maybe not hold their breath and stamp their feet like a small child in a shop when they don't get their way, is you know, he's going to kind of receive some of the players that he's potentially asked for. Now, you know, I think the usual thing we'll say, whether they are absolutely the first choice players that Sarri has wanted will be a question that I think people will potentially ask. But I think in terms of a style standpoint, you know, they are, particularly Jorginho and Kovacic, I think they're very, very close to what you consider to be prototypical players that Sarri would like to work with. So, you know, I think on reflection, it's pretty much incomparable to last season. I think, you know, there were rumours of a lot of panic sort of buying last season, and just generally, I think some of the players we were kind of linked with and bought weren't particularly fantastic. And I mean, I think overall you would have to say that this window in particular is much better than maybe even the last two sort of summer transfer windows that we've had. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty pleased. I would like a bit more firepower up front, but I think that you know there's a bit of a kind of quiet revolution happening at Chelsea, and maybe a little bit unrealistic to expect that they would have been able to do that in one window. So yeah, I mean, I think the midfield was the area that I would have liked to see a strengthen, and I think 100%. Both Kovacic and Jorginho have been very big in that respect.
Yeah, and again, I was saying this before the window started. You know, the midfield was the most important area to address first compared to every other position, in my opinion, because we can't really play Sarri football without that midfield, and we just didn't have the players to really do justice to that system. Obviously, signing Jorginho is key. It's massive. And I think Kovacic as well. You know, I've kind of seen Kovacic as that upgrade to Vecino. You know, he can play multiple roles in midfield. Very good touch. And again, I mean, the most important thing is you get the final ball ability. You know, you get someone that is very comfortable playing in the final third as well, and actually keeps the ball and makes sense of your possession in there. And obviously, we've seen with Ross Barkley, he can't do it, in my opinion. I know people are saying, oh, you're judging him by a few games in pre-season. But, you know, Ross Barkley is someone that I've seen play for Everton so many times. He hasn't really improved on any of his weaknesses. And this is why I was always kind of baffled by the deal in the first place. Because I was just thinking, well, how are we signing a guy that hasn't really shown that he's ready for this level just yet? But, I mean, his career's not over just yet. We've seen Sarri use him on the left and on the right. I mean, the game against Man City, second half he was playing on the wings, so I kind of see that being his future as the season does go on. I see him being used as a utility player there, but again, Joe, I wanted to ask you if there's one thing that's disappointed me a bit, and I know, you know, through our private conversations you have your thoughts and opinions. How do you feel about how, you know, this lack of ability to really sell any of the players? Now, that's really been a surprise to me. We've really struggled so far to send players on loan and to sell players. And what's your general thoughts on that? Who do you think's to blame? Do you think that Marina deserves fair criticism for how things have turned out?
I mean, I suppose if we say that the press reports regarding bids for certain players have been fairly accurate, I mean, again, I'm not stating whether they have been or not, but I think some of the sums that we've seen for certain players, to me, you know, I think that they were kind of fees. Particularly, I'm sort of talking about Willian. I probably would have sold it if a bid was around about £60 million. A couple of papers were suggesting that was made. So in that respect, I mean, I think that if you've got the ability to turn a 29, 30-year-old player into a £60 million transfer, and then potentially go out and buy someone a lot younger, or put that towards someone who could potentially be a player at Chelsea for the next 5 seasons, then that for me is something that you have to do. And, you know, there are people who think Willian's a good player. There are people who don't particularly think Willian is great at all. But, you know, he's a decent enough player. But for that sort of money, you know, it to me seemed a bit of a no-brainer. And I think looking a little bit more at the loan situation, or players potentially going out on loan. There will be some time left for players to go to foreign clubs, and obviously domestically, and I think in the Championship and the Football League as well for some of the younger players. But yeah, I mean, looking at players that have been kept around, maybe someone like Danny Drinkwater sort of springs to mind of someone who I would have thought maybe would have cleared out. But again, I think there seems to be an obsession that if we have bought a player for a certain amount of money, that we have to recoup that fee when we sell them. And this is even in the case where, I think we overpaid for Drinkwater in the first place.
Of course.
And then obviously
he was like I think he's our 5th record signing in this moment in time.
Yeah, which is insane to think just how bad he is. But and the fact that he obviously barely played last season, didn't make the England World Cup squad. So there's so much that would have affected his transfer value. He's probably a 15, 20 million pound player, and I think the club is still demanding near 40 million pound for him. So there has to be a kind of a sense of realism. I think that maybe is a little bit lacking at Chelsea at times. They're happy to get these overinflated fees. Even today, Austria going for 60 million pound a couple of seasons ago seems pretty crazy. I mean, even 60 million pounds for a player today is still pretty big money. But back then, you're probably talking more 80, 90 million pounds maybe in today's market. So we're quite happy to sell players for overinflated fees. But I think when it comes to keeping that money on players that we've maybe overspent on or just really haven't worked out, the club tend to just try and hang on to them for whatever reason. I mean, it's not like Drinkwater's going to go on loan and come back, the second coming of Frank Lampard. So
it's ridiculous. It is.
It's got a question. I think sometimes you've just got to cut your losses a little bit sooner. But I think the club are going to have to see what pans out this season. Again, I suppose now that I'm thinking about it, he's English, he's homegrown. We know that we have a little bit of a situation with some foreign registered players, so maybe that's part of the reason there as well. So
yeah, I agree. And with someone like Drinkwater, for example, I mean, we've known for a while, interest from West Ham for many months now, and they've been priced out. And it's just like, these clubs have been spending like crazy. They're not going to pay for a player that isn't worth the money. And Drinkwater isn't. I mean, he's barely played. Again, you said he's not an international player. So how can you really command that sort of money? You can't. I mean, are you praying that the Chinese clubs are going to come and sign all these guys? Something most likely not. That's not going to be happening. And I kind of feel we make this mistake because it's like, if you're not going to sell Drinkwater now for this amount, when do you think you'll ever get that amount for him? I mean, if anything now, he's barely going to play if he doesn't get a loan move, if he's lucky. And his value is going to get less and less. And, it comes to a point, as you're saying, accept the loss, take the L, and cut your losses. Bakayoko, another one, getting that loan move to AC Milan. Again, someone we're never going to get the money back from. I don't see him having a future too as well. Even if he does well for Milan, that doesn't mean anything because Milan aren't the old Milan anymore. They're like a top 10 team in Serie A. So, again, his future's not looking too bright in terms of, having a career at Chelsea again. But again, it really does, the contrast between this window and last season, if anything, I could say that we've actually paid the value for the players this window. That's just why it doesn't really bother me how much money we've spent. But last window, what really bothered me was the fact that we signed so many average players with very inflated fees. Signed a lot of players that weren't needed whatsoever. And now we're struggling. I mean, Zappacosta, every club in Italy wanted to bring this guy back. He's still here. Morata's another example too. A lot of interest. And I think there was a point during this window he would have gone. But I just think when it came down to the financial side, clubs didn't want to meet the fee that Chelsea wanted. Basically, all the players we signed last summer that we don't want, obviously we can't get rid of. Willian's another one. We were speaking about him too. I think the money that Barca paid for him, I don't think unless a Chinese club comes in for him during the January window, we'll never get that money for Willian again. And I just kind of feel that I don't think that Chelsea have that negotiation power anymore now. That's what it's looking like to me. Clubs aren't taking us as seriously. We're not really getting any of the demands that we want so far. And how do you feel about that? Do you think maybe I'm being a bit too hyperbolic, or do you think this is it's a genuine fear we should have?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was a kind of a bit of a new reality in that. We've been in the Champions League once in the past 3 seasons. You can look at the fact, that we've won league titles. I mean, Conte's league title, I think, is looking increasingly more and more like playing once a week was a huge contributing factor into that, not having any European football. And then I think also, if you add into the fact that no one really knew how to deal with the fruit at the back system for about half a year. The following season, I think fifth was a fairly kind of accurate reflection. So, I think we have fallen from grace a little bit. I'm someone who keeps a tabs on these kind of world football indexes, and looking sort of at kind of our peak from say 2004 to maybe 2010, 11. We were kind of perennially a top 5 team in pretty much every kind of ranking system. Now I think we're like between 12th and 15th now. So there is a new reality that I think we have to face up to. I think the point you made about us signing so many average players is pretty crucial, because I think it also means that it's quite difficult to sell them, because who's really going to want to invest significant money in a player that has barely played for a season, and equally when they have played, they've been pretty average as well. So I think it's a little bit of a new reality. I do think that the football landscape has changed. Obviously I think it's not a significant or a really sort of controversial point to say that maybe we've kind of fallen out of the top tier of spending. We can't compete with some of these clubs that are backed by sort of sovereign wealth funds and nation states, etc. And I think that there is a general curb on spending to some extent, although I think I would say also the fact that we were quite willing to spend so much money on a goalkeeper maybe suggests that maybe the money has been there. We've just not really. Yeah,
when we're desperate enough, then we can get the players. Yeah, but again, that actually segues in nicely to some of my thoughts on the loan army. Now, again, I personally feel too. I'm looking at players from clubs like United and clubs like Real Madrid. I'm seeing someone like Fosu Mensah now. Really, what's he really done so far in his young career? He's got a second Premier League move. Just moved to Fulham. I'm looking at Real Madrid. Their Moroccan right back. What's his name? Yassine Afmin or something like that. Getting that loan move. Getting that loan move to Dortmund for this season. Another guy that really hasn't done anything to in his young career. Look at the level which they're playing at, and I'm looking at guys like Jada Silva. Obviously, just got the loan move to Bristol City. I'm looking at a lot of our young players that we have that have big potential and obviously the very big talents. I feel too with how we negotiate, in terms of putting all these unrealistic demands on these players, asking for unrealistic fees as well. I think that it comes back to haunt us. I think it comes back to affect us, and I think that too often we're not really marketing these guys as best as they could be, because I think for the talent they have. Yeah, I just think that we're not really marketing these guys as best as we can, because I think that at the end of the day, we keep selling to whoever meets any demands, and we don't really think about the players' best interest. And I think long term it comes to affect them.
Yeah, I think the strangest thing for me is when we seem to build up a pretty good relationship with a club. Let's say after Andreas Christensen left Borussia Mönchengladbach, we had a really good relationship with them. They kind of understood. The type of player we're going to get from Chelsea is going to be pretty high quality. Obviously, he was very successful.
Yeah.
Why didn't someone like Jake Clark-Salter end up going out on loan there? Why didn't we send maybe another player, a midfielder, a forward, someone else? I think the way, particularly sort of Manchester United and maybe Real Madrid and other clubs, when they sort of loan players to clubs and they kind of start building that relationship with them in terms of the trust in the quality of the player, the level of the player, these sorts of things that are important to clubs who rely on loans to kind of fill their squad out. We seem to do that with quite a few clubs, and yet, there never really seems to be kind of any follow through. And I particularly look at the German market as, we've sent Batshuayi on loan to Dortmund before he was injured. He was looking like a fantastic player for them, and yet, who's gone out there this season? Who's capitalised on that link that we've established with them? No one.
Of course,
so,
no one.
It's just a strange situation to see us just not capitalise on these networking opportunities. They don't come around easily. You don't just have a link with a club. Not everyone has a Vitesse, and whether Vitesse is the right level for our better younger players, for the sort of ones who have got the most ability. And it just seems peculiar that particularly someone like Dortmund, who obviously really, really high standard, fantastic league, always in the Champions League, play good football. It's a young side, so there's no pressure on a young player to come in and feel out of place. And yet there's no kind of follow through in terms of developing that link. So I think that you're right.
Yeah, it's frustrating. I'm looking at Reece Oxford. I think they haven't announced who the German club is, but he's got another loan move in the Bundesliga. And you're right. Someone like Jake Clark-Salter was just better than Reece Oxford's. He should be playing at this level right now. someone like Jada Silva, I think maybe Vitesse would have been a much better club for him to go to compared to someone like Bristol City, because as we've seen already, had a fantastic season on loan at Charlton, won the Player of the Year there, and it basically amounted to nothing because, you know, the best move he could get was a move to Bristol City after all of that. It's just not good enough. And again, obviously, it really just highlights the point to me that these guys are purely seen as money, because I'm sure we reject so many players from moving to certain clubs, or so many clubs get priced out from signing these guys because they don't have the financials behind them. And I think that it's a real disservice to these guys. And this is why we end up with, guys like Piazon still here, Van Ginkel still here, Pasalic still here as well, because no one's going to pay the 20 million we think these guys are worth, and they end up just staying on the books for too long.
Yeah, I mean, I think the major theory I have about this is that we have turned into a club that's so willing to loan out young players that if you are a club who maybe doesn't have 20, 30 million pounds to commit to a player, you know that you're going to be able to get them on the cheap, maybe pay a €1 million loan fee or £2 million loan fee and their wages, and you get them for a season. And you know that it's going to happen because that's what Chelsea do. I think we've in a way, we've kind of backed ourselves into a corner with some of these players. I mean, you look at the Thomas Callis and Piazon at Fulham, you know, they're coming to the Premier League.
Yeah.
You would say either that they should have been sold in this window, you know, and let them get on with their careers elsewhere.
Yeah.
But I think that I sort of was told with those guys in particular that, you know, Fulham came in with kind of loan fees which were much less than what they were paying in the Championship, because they kind of knew, you know, that Chelsea would probably entertain that, because that's the sort of club we are. So this model that we've had in place for ages with the loan army, I think it's making less and less sense, because, I mean, we've still got maybe 15 players who need to leave the club on the books at the moment, and it's, you know, it does catch up with you eventually. And I think once teams get wise to the fact that you are going to do this and this is your approach, then they can play the waiting game. You know, I mean, a lot of these clubs abroad now must be looking at Chelsea's squad and thinking, you know, Pasalic, Van Ginkel, Piazon, you know, we can get these all guys on the cheap. But, you know, I think that's just something we're going to have to figure out how to deal with it, because it's okay having this strategy where we think we're being really smart by loaning out these players and potentially increasing their transfer value. But I think what we've seen particularly this summer is that has come sort of 180 now, and I think it's going to be more and more hard for us to kind of either sell these younger players, or, you know, you'll face the potential of a Courtois situation where they run down their contract and they go for next to nothing, and it's not going to be because they're in a similar situation to Courtois. It's just because no one wants to buy them. Yeah,
I 100% agree, and you know, you have to update the strategy right now. That's what they need to do. I mean, surely now the best way to make money right now, and you're seeing it, you know, for clubs like how Real Madrid make their money and Bayern Munich, for example, you have to care about the development a bit. You have to play the long-term game now. You don't have to make money immediately from their loan fees just yet. You know, let them grow, let their reputations get better, let clubs actually want to try and sign these guys permanently, and then arrange to have buyback clauses or sell them for a good profit. That's what needs to be done. I'm looking at someone like Zuma. Let's say he has a fantastic loan move at Everton and we still don't want him. He's got about, 4 years left on his contract then. It's meaning that we demand a lot of money for him. Now, unless Zuma has, you know, is the best defender in the Premier League, and clubs are thinking, okay, this guy's worth paying 50, 60 million, no one's going to meet any demands that Chelsea want for him. And he'll end up just having another loan move if Sarri doesn't want to use him again for next season. And it's just not efficient enough. It can't continue like this. And I thought it was pretty surprising how we really haven't made too much money yet at all. And I'm thinking normally, you know, we make money. You know, our net spend is pretty good because we profit from the players we've sold. It's looking like this window is going to be full of players leaving on loan, and us not really capitalising from any transfer fees. So couldn't that affect us when it comes to financial fair play?
I think, I mean, the club will be relatively covered, I think, for this season. I think that they are probably gambling on, you know, a return to Champions League football, in which case, you know, and I think, again, the fact that we signed Kepa to 7-year contract. You know, the transfer fee effectively gets kind of split into 7, and it gets amortised over the length of his contract. So we're only really paying like 10 million plus wages or whatever it is for this season. So you know, it's not a huge amount. Obviously, we've got about 35 million pound in from Courtois. So when you're sort of looking at sort of the whole kind of net effect, it's really that kind of amortised fee. So the transfer fee basically divided by the contract and the wages. You know, that's the amount that you have to keep an eye on. So I think probably with Jorginho and Kepa, you know, I don't think really that we probably would have broken too much into that 35, maybe 40 mil that we got for Courtois. And obviously Kovacic as well, coming in on loan, no transfer fee. You're just really worrying about covering the wages with him. So I mean, I think we'll be okay. I mean, obviously we did make a few little commercial moves in the summer. Hyundai, what was it? The sleeve sponsor, all the new range. But you know, I think there are a few things that will boost that as well. Obviously, the Nike deal was still pretty fresh. There's still a lot of money coming in from that as well. So I do think we'll be okay. But I think that, you know, without Champions League football, I think we will. If we don't make the top 4, we don't win the Europa League this season, I can see us starting to be left behind a little bit by other clubs, particularly Liverpool, who, you know, now that they're kind of becoming a bit more of a team back in the top 4 more regularly now, you can see with their level of spending. And, you know, I think Klopp is an attractive manager for people to come and play for. So, you know, Liverpool leading us a little bit behind in their ability to go and spend and just go and get their guys. City, obviously, we know how dangerous they can be. I was a little bit surprised they were quiet. Manchester United can spend. I just think that there's obviously something going on with Mourinho there. So, you know, we've kind of gone from being one of the top clubs to maybe 4th, even maybe 5th. You know, I think Arsenal can also invest pretty heavily now. So, you know, I think there's a chance that we have to get back into Europe, because, you know, that's a huge difference in the amount of money that we make as a club. And yeah, I mean, that would be something that contributes pretty significantly next season. But I think we're covered for this season. But, you know, I don't think we can regularly like, sort of miss out on the Champions League, because it's such a huge revenue stream for the club.
Good. I mean, I love when I get disproven. So you know, it's good that you can educate all of us when it comes to the financial side of football and how these deals, you know, how there is always a financial sense behind massive transfers like this. So, you know, that is good to hear. But I think just to wrap up the stream, just, you know, talking about some of the just the window in general. And, you know, some of the players. I mean, we haven't spoken about Kepa just yet. And for me, I think this guy is a sweeper keeper we needed. Even though I do like Courtois, I think he's a world-class goalkeeper. I don't think he would have really suited what we needed from him at the back, especially because his distribution and his passing isn't very good, and it never has been. And I think that ideally, you know, someone like Kepa is he's more suited to this style of play.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, I think in Kepa, you are not only buying potential, you're buying a goalkeeper who is already incredibly good. Now, you know, if we're looking at this from a really logical perspective, you know, he was the goalkeeper that Real Madrid wanted to buy in January. And, you know, I think part of the reasons why the Courtois talks eventually broke down was because they couldn't get Kepa to come to Madrid to be their goalkeeper. Courtois then came back to be their number 1 target. So, you know, if we're being realistic, I think Real Madrid probably had Kepa penciled in as their number 1 choice. I think that maybe the fact that he's Basque and obviously the Madrid connections, maybe there was something there about him that wanted to go there. And obviously he signed a pretty significant contract extension with Bilbao straight pretty much after that transfer window. So, you know, he was pretty well thought of in Spain. I think a lot of Spanish fans and particularly over the past few days were suggesting that they would have rather had him at the World Cup than some of the goalkeepers that they took. I think he's exceptionally agile. He's a great shot stopper. I mean, he's
very acrobatic, very eccentric too.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, I think one of the criticisms of Courtois, particularly with kind of shots that were kind of low down from him, was that he was a little bit slow to get down. You know, I mean, we can all look at the Barcelona game and other games where he had a little bit of a nightmare. But I think there were some weaknesses where he was so tall, and I don't think he had that agility. Maybe of Peter Cech when Cech was younger, didn't quite have that same ability to get down. Whereas I think where Kepa's a little bit shorter, he's about 3 inches shorter, I think, than Courtois. Now, he is incredibly athletic. You know, he's got fantastic reflexes as well. But I think you're right. The key point with him is he might be, after Jorginho, the second best passer at the club. I mean, his ability to something like, I was just looking at some stats.
You really hate Fabregas, don't you?
I forget that he plays at the club most of the time. So okay, so he might be the third best passer in the club after Fabregas and Jorginho. But this is a goalkeeper who's picking out 11 long passes a game. From pretty much pinging it from as deep as possible. I think that's pretty impressive. And when you consider Courtois' goal kicks, they were
really cool.
Exactly. Yeah, and when you've got someone, particularly when we had Branislav Ivanovic, you can't really miss him. It was tried and tested routine to get the ball out from the back for 10 years was to just smash it in Ivanovic's general direction and he'd win the header. And yet, the amount of times he overhit and didn't get the ball anywhere near him, I think that was quite a telltale sign. But I think Kepa will be very impressive. He may take a little while to adjust to sort of the physical nature of the Premier League. He's
set pieces and stuff.
But he's typically pretty good on crosses as well. So and he's quite aggressive. So I think maybe he has the right mentality. And I liked his interview today. I don't think he's that bothered by the fee. I think he really wanted to come here. To me, I think he's going to be a great player. And also, when you think of, I'm not one of these people that's going to hold a massive grudge against Courtois. I think football is and I think he's played it perfectly. But I think you're not going to get a guy who's going to go away with Spain and then start sort of chipping away at the club and making comments about his future sort of every single international break. So I think from that respect he's going to be a little bit more in tune with what Chelsea fans are expecting. Whether that's a massive thing or not, I think for some people it will be. But I think he's a little bit more down to earth than maybe Courtois.
Yeah, let's just hope that it's not going to be the curse of another record signing that happens to be Spanish and doesn't end up doing as well so far. Obviously, we'll still be patient with Morata. He still has another season to show what he can do. But yeah, the third Spanish club record signing. So, but yeah, I agree with everything you're saying about Kepa. I think the club giving him a 7-year contract made a lot more sense too. On top of that, so we don't really have to worry about him. And I kind of think now, when you look at all the top clubs in Europe, everyone has their goalkeeper situation sorted now. So I don't see anyone trying to come in for him at any time in the future. So I think we're good there. But yeah, obviously Kepa, Kovacic, I think two very good signings. And I've always seen it as a bit of like a foundation. Yeah, even though I still think that we will be challenging when it comes to April and March. We might not necessarily win, but I think that it won't be a case of us being 20 points behind anyone. But I definitely think that we've made the smart signings that Sarri really needed to get his system kick-started. But again, maybe to end this video, talk about the failed move for Fekir. Now, a lot of fans are getting very hopeful and excited. I think by now, we're Chelsea fans. We should never be too excited. We should always be a little bit pessimistic. And everyone was talking about Fekir. There's been that photo on social media that's really made me laugh too. Of you see that guy in the black tracksuit that was shaking Willian's hand, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's Fekir." People completely disregarding the fact that he had that World Cup thing in Paris when he was showing the Lyon fans the trophy, and he's been photographed doing training sessions there as well. So it wouldn't make any sense for him to. I mean, unless he can like instantly transmit himself, but I don't know. But how did you see the Fekir thing playing out?
I think the thing that I can say, and this is just from a friend who is an agent he's got incredibly good links with Lyon and just generally in French football, was that we did meet with Fekir's representatives before the match we had with Lyon during the week.
Yeah,
I think the thing was that it was just too late in the window. Anyone who is familiar with Jean-Michel Aulas, the Lyon president, will know that he's probably one of the most difficult people to negotiate with, and Nabil Fekir is the Lyon captain. He's an academy product. This wasn't going to be a deal that we were going to be able to push over the line in a matter of days. I mean, you could see how he reacted to Liverpool's kind of press, all the photos being leaked and all that kind of stuff, and it's sort of the disrespect that Liverpool, I think probably he felt paid to Lyon and himself. He just pulled the plug on the deal. So I think in that respect that he was going to be difficult to work with. And again, people going back to when Chelsea bought Michael Essien from Lyon for like a record fee back then, it was a massive saga during that transfer window. Was Aulas dragging the fee out? So I mean, I think maybe a little bit unrealistic to expect that it was going to be concluded in such a short period of time. There was a lot of reports coming out today that the club was still kind of really pushing for him up until about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Before sort of the window was closing. But I think it was really a case of starting the deal a little bit too late. I think he would have been a really good addition. This is a guy who probably is capable with 15, 20 goals a season. He's would be a good inverted winger. Potential the players on number 10 could possibly slot into midfield. So I can kind of see the reasons for the club going for him. But yeah, I think it was a case of the club really pushed as hard as they could. But I think some of the conversations we've had in WhatsApp and stuff over the past few days, I'm just thinking, some cases it's not anything Chelsea weren't doing. You think the only criticism you can make is that maybe they started the deal too late. But when they were actually negotiating, I just don't think Lyon were going to sell. And I think it was probably the same case with Anthony Martial. That United were just not going to sell him to Chelsea. And I know people can say, we should have pushed, we should have done this and that. Well, Real Madrid pushed for Eden Hazard and we said no, 300 times. So you've got to expect other clubs to do that for their better players as well. You can't just expect Chelsea to steamroll any side and just pick up their best players. So, as I said, I think we tried. I think we pushed very hard. My only criticism would be that I think if you know that you want to sign a player from Lyon, you have to start that conversation 3-4 weeks before the end of the transfer window, because CWANless is famous for walking away from deals. He's famous for getting the best amount of money. So,
but yeah, I agree, and this is what frustrates me, because I still think we're making this mistake of going for the big guys way too late. It's been the story for the past few transfer windows now. I think with Pogba, why are you trying to go in for this guy right near the end? It's no time in hell to do anything to get that deal. There were a few signings last, Koulibaly was another example. Previous windows before that. So many big name guys that we go for, and it's always too late, and it just really baffles me, this lack of focus at times. Now, we've been speaking to Zaha, Martial, Bailey, Pulisic. It goes on, and we weren't able to secure any of those targets. And it's just like, I don't understand why. It seems like we just cast our net very wide. Maybe we're casting the net way too wide. Maybe it needs to be a bit more focused. With Fekir, surely if you wanted to sign a guy, you would have made a bid straight after Liverpool messed up.
Yeah, I think probably the criticism that I have of Chelsea in this summer, it can't be too bad, because I look at what the other clubs have done around us, and I think actually we've probably had either the best or the second best window out of the clubs around us. I just think that sometimes, Martial's a very good point. There were reports that we'd met with him well before the World Cup had even started, and I don't think sometimes we get the hint from clubs that a player is not for sale. It doesn't matter what you're going to do. We are not going to sell this player to you. We did it with Wayne Rooney with Manchester United seasons ago. We pursued him, and I don't think we ended up getting anyone in as well. I think Rooney maybe had a bit of a decline the next season, but up until that point, we weren't really linked with anyone as good as him. And I think that's a thing that I would say of the club, is that they have to be a little bit more in tune with who they're negotiating with, and realise they're spending 6 to 8 weeks negotiating with someone who is not going to come. If you figure that out within the first week, there's no point you keep pushing and asking the player to put pressure on the club and do X, Y, Z. It's just not going to happen. So, I think that we have to start realising that's the case with some players. And as you say, if you can't get Martial and Zaha's not going to move for £100 million or whatever, then 4 weeks ago you go to Lyon and say, okay, how much do you want for Fekir? And you get to a point after 2.5 weeks where you can negotiate a pretty good deal for him, and then you sign him. But to start in the last week of the transfer window, particularly, and the thing is as well, Chelsea know Lyon. They were negotiating for Tolisso last window. They've negotiated for players with them before and not got anywhere near them. The Michael Essien thing at the time was a massive saga, and it's like all that knowledge that we have about that particular club just gets thrown out the window, and we start from scratch. So it's a little bit peculiar, but I think hopefully that we will see maybe that change in the future. I think, but you've got to know when you beat, basically. And I think sometimes we don't, and that's just one of the issues that we have.
Yeah, and I still think it's a case of pursuing the wrong targets as well. To be honest, Golovin and Rugani were pretty pointless in my opinion. We ended up getting a better player in Kovacic than Golovin too. And it's just like we wasted so much time negotiating for these guys for it to amount to nothing. And it's like this could have been time focus on, key positions and key targets. It seems like, I don't know, I'm just guessing, but I'm guessing I kind of see it like this. We target all these top players and we go for the easiest negotiation first before we get to the harder one. Maybe I'm seeing it wrong. Is there any truth to it, or do I need to, like, my perspective changed?
No, I mean, I think that there's definitely truth to it, but I think it goes back to my earlier point in that we never seem to get the hint. I mean, there should be a fairly intuitive feeling when you're not getting anywhere with a club, and instead of pushing for another 2-3 weeks, and I think you should start switching your focus elsewhere. I think personally, I negotiate and work internally and externally as well, and there has to be a point in every negotiation where you either cut your losses or you realise you have to make a massive compromise to get what you want. And if that is paying ridiculous amounts of money over the top for players, which is something which obviously we don't do, then you have to walk away from these deals and look at other players. And I think that's going to be something that the club is going to have to learn to do a lot more, because the amount of money in the game now, these kind of teams that we're targeting the players from can afford to keep the players. It's not a huge issue for them to retain players these days. So we have to take a slightly different negotiating tactic, I think, personally, and maybe look at actually say, if you want to go for the top tier player, go for a top tier player, but you should be negotiating similarly for your kind of plan B and your plan C. And not just to the point where you've had a discussion with the guys, intermediaries or agents. I mean, you should be talking to clubs about transfer fees, because that to me is where deals get hung up. I think the Martial stuff, it's probably fair to say that we probably had a personal deals and package agreed with him. Probably same here, probably same with Regani. I mean, his agent came out and said there was an exceptional offer on the table. So we can get that bit sorted, but we seem to be focused more time on doing that than negotiating with the relevant club. So it
seems so weird, that Martial one, especially with the interest and Willian, and obviously Zuma in the end was a late one that came out as well. But maybe I think it was a case of United. In the end, they kind of changed their tune very late. And then Chelsea just weren't aggressive enough to really get that deal sorted and get that deal done. But I don't know, it's a shame. I'm hoping that, to be honest, I see in the January window, I expect more business to be done. And I think that is definitely another discussion for another live stream, because I think we've been speaking for long enough. Thank you for joining me today. If there's anything you want to plug or mention.
Not at the moment, no. But the next live stream I should have a few things hopefully ready to go. I'm just about finishing up a piece on Eden Hazard that I've been writing for quite a while. That should be probably within the next maybe 1 to 2 weeks. But apart from that, no. It's been quite a summer for me, which is quite nice.
Okay, cool. But anyway, you guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm Nini FC. This is Blue Line CV. Signing out.